Yes, sir. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Yes. We'll begin, sir. I'm ready. Are you ready?
Chundi, can you confirm?
Hello?
Yeah,
Yes,
please
sir.
go ahead.
Yes. A very good evening, everyone. I am Rituparna KS. Firstly, I extend extend a hearty welcome to everyone present here to today's webinar on recent trends in product design by Atanu Roy Chowdhury sir. Atanu Roy Chowdhury is from Kolkata and he is the CEO of Capsule Labs. He is a part of the board of mentors at the Atal Incubation Center, Sikkim, Manipal University Technology Incubation Center. He is associated as an expert with the Industry Incubation Cells at Government College of Engineering, Leather Technology, and Calcutta Institute of Technology. He has also worked as a technical staff at Infosys, Set Labs, Harvard Sensor Networking Lab, Telcordia Advanced Technology, Solution Labs, and Blue Highway. Sir has done a lot of research in the field of IoT and wireless sensor networks and has got over 17 years of transnational professional experiences. We all are very excited for this webinar, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Rituparna. A very, very warm welcome to all of you who are joining in from various parts. Uh, I know it's late in the evening. Calcutta today has very pleasant weather. It's been raining, so you might be able to hear some thunderstorms coming in every now and then. And overall, I think it's a good evening to discuss about creating products. Why? Because the world is changing around us. Because we there is the need for creating products that solve our own problems in India, right? So that is why I wanted to spend some time with all of you and essentially discuss how do you go about designing your own product? What are the kind of challenges that you may face, and what are the possible resolutions, right? So, in today's discussion, because we are going to be talking about products, right? There is a disclaimer that because we may be using a lot of brand names and personal experiences, right? So, this is all for educational purposes. It is not meant to malign, or it is not meant to promote any particular brand, but this is just for educational purposes. So that said, why are we building a product, right? If we are thinking about building a product, then what is important is to first understand what a business is, right? In very, very layman terms, a business is a legal entity, right? Something that has the right to do to sell products or services for profit, right? So a business is a legal entity that is seeking to maximize shareholder profits, and it does so by delivering value to its target customers. It's relatively simple to understand. As a business, you want to provide some value to your target customer. How are you going to deliver that value? You are going to deliver that value by selling them, right? By selling them a product, or by selling them maybe a service, right? So that is also very well understood. You're selling them either something that is very tangible. So we all understand the difference between a product and a service, right? So product is very easy to understand. It's, a scissor is a product. Hair cutting is a service. A car is a product. Taxi is a service, right? A smartwatch is a product. Healthcare is a service, right? So in many cases, what ends up happening is that it's relatively easy to be able to distinguish between what is a product and what is a service, right? So if you look at products versus services, products are tangible, right? They can be touched, they can be seen, they can be felt, right? Whereas services can be experienced. Typically, products are mass manufactured, right? They are made in typically large volumes, whereas services use skilled labor, somebody who is good at doing something, who has developed that skill over time, and that is why they are providing that service. Generally, when you think about a product, because it is mass manufactured, therefore the specifications of a product has to be defined beforehand. Right? If you are making, say a scissor, right? You know how long it is, what kind of material it is made with. So these are the standardization specifications. Right? Whereas services are generally customizable. You can go to a salon and ask for a long haircut or a short haircut or a crop cut, right? These are all customizable services. In terms of delivery, product is typically delivered in a physical package, whereas a service is typically delivered through interactions, right? Through discussions, through specifying how you want that particular service, right? Say, for example, you go to a restaurant, if you want a particular menu item, a menu will be provided. You interact with the waiter, tell them what you want, they list it down, give it to the kitchen. So there is a process, there's an interaction that is happening and a process that is taking care of it. And typically with products, when somebody sells you a product, there is a transfer of ownership. It used to a product, when you go to a shop and want to buy a product, the product used to belong to the shopkeeper. After paying the money, you are now the owner of the product. Whereas typically consuming services means that there is a transfer of benefits. So in many cases, it is relatively easy to distinguish between what is a product and what is a service. Now, fortunately, there was one more point over there, which is in terms of pricing. That typically a product is priced based on its manufacturing and distribution costs, whereas services are typically priced based on the time and experience of the provider. Now, in both these cases, while it is easy to understand what products and services are, in many cases, what especially in today's world, uh, products come with a layer of services around them, and services may be built around products. So there is that clear demarcation that was there between products and services has kind of merged a little bit. So, for example, when you were talking about a streaming service, say, for example, you wanted to watch a movie on Netflix, say, for example, right? Now, Netflix is a streaming service. You're paying a subscription fee for the service. But at the same time, Netflix may sponsor or it may create some own content, right? So it may sponsor a movie, right, which is a product. So the content is the product, the viewing experience becomes the service. Similarly, when you have your internet service provider, right, the benefits of the internet connection that you are enjoying, that is the service. But the connectivity infrastructure, right, the modem in your house, the wiring and everything, those are its products, right? So things can get a little ambiguous in terms of what is a product and what is a service, right? Same with in the case of higher education, right? The content is a product, whereas the mechanism of delivery is the service. So these things starts to get fuzzy. And when we are talking about delivering value to customers, what we tend to see is that in many cases, what you can do is you can take a set of services, you can standardize them, saying, say, for example, you have a portion of biryani, right? When you know the quantity of biryani that a restaurant is going to serve in a particular serving, it gets standardized, right? And it is packaged, it can become a product. So going to a shop, ordering biryani, you can get a service for it. But going online, ordering a biryani from Beirut, which comes to you in a pre-packaged box with specific quantities of biryani and other accompaniments all together, right? That is a product. So services can be packaged together, they can be standardized and sold as specific units, right? So they can become products. And at the same time, when you think about a product, products can have multiple layers of customization services, right? For example, you go and buy say a Kent water purifier. And along with that, you may want to buy a yearly maintenance package, right? And that is a service. Somebody comes in, say, 3 times a year, 4 times a year, and services that water purifier. That is a service, right? So even when you sell a product, you can sell the AMC as a service. So when you are thinking about innovation, when you are thinking about what kind of products you want to create, in the digital and connected world of today, the products and services are kind of interconnected. That's the first message I wanted you all to absorb. And if you are building a product, right, there is a concept of creating a generics, right, or generic product. What is a generic product? A generic product is something that is very well understood in the market. It is something that there are many people are offering that product in the market. In terms of economics, we call it a perfectly competitive market, right? There are many buyers, many sellers. There is pretty much no differentiation between any two sellers, and they become essentially price takers in the market. Whatever people are, the buyers are willing to offer, the seller has to accept that. Right? So there, that's what a generic product is. You will see a lot of, say, for example, generics in terms of pharmacological products, right? You will find that there are generic drugs that are available. You will find that in many cases, you will find the same kind of toy, right, being sold under different brand names. They were probably made by the same person and been sold under different brands, right? So generics are when you think about a product, you can build generics, and generics have an advantage that you really do not spend a whole lot of R&D costs. You're not really building a differentiated product, right? So your efforts are spent towards marketing that particular product. Your strengths are more aligned to, you may know your particular territory very well, so you may be able to sell a generic product in your market space. So those are the pros of generic products. But on the con side, the market leaders kind of always have advantage, right? The product is easily replicable, and there are no barriers to entry. Essentially, anybody else can come in and make the same product and make it available at a lower price point, right? So there is one way of thinking in terms of, if there are many players in the market who are offering the same product, then your product, it's very hard for your product to kind of stand out, right? So not that building generics is a bad business value proposition. There are companies that go down that path, and there are companies that build generic products. But if you are looking to innovate, then you would want to do something that is different from what the market has to offer, right? What kind of differentiation? We'll come to that in a little bit, right? So what you would want to do is, if you are trying to solve a problem, and I understand that you have had a previous session on design thinking methodology, so you understand how to go about a solution, right? But if you are imagining a solution for a particular problem that you or your loved ones are facing, there are essentially two ways of going about the solution, right? One is a more critical aspect, right? I tend to think of it more in terms of artwork, because when you are talking about a critical thought process, you are looking at what is the data, what does the data tell me, right? You are going extremely data driven and extremely precise in your implementation, in your specifications, right? Now there is another school of thought which essentially says that yes, you can build a product by looking at all your specific quantitative data, but you can also think about your product in a little bit of abstraction, right? What is it that meets the user's need, right? And this is a thought process which is a little bit on the creative side. And more often than not, what I have found in my experiences is typically your balanced products seem to address both functionality and empathy of the user base. As in, they not only solve the problem, but they solve the problem in a way that makes the users comfortable, right, in terms of using it. So it's somewhere between fine art and abstract painting, right? It's a fine balance that has to be struck, right? Because in many cases, what ends up happening is when you design a product, the same product can be used in different categories, in different ways, right? For example, if I think about a smart lighting solution, right? A smart lighting solution is a lighting solution which you can control using say, for example, a mobile app, right? Now, your customers for this app may be different. When you are building your product, you may have built the technology to be able to control, so that a light is controlled by a DALI interface, which in turn, or a KNX interface, which in turn is controlled by, which connects over a Wi-Fi network over to a backend cloud, and you can send commands to the cloud. All of that is great. But where will this light be used, right? And there are significant differences in the way you build the light based on how it will get used, right? For example, if this technology is being used in a consumer scenario, say in somebody's home, right? In that case, comfort and convenience may be the top priority, right? Because somebody who is using a lighting solution, a smart lighting solution at home, they they may be using like 5, 10, 15 smart lights, right? So they want a mobile app which is convenient. They may want a voice interface so that when they go to bed they can say, "Hey, good night," switch off all the lights and everything is switched off, right? So from a end consumer's perspective, the comfort and convenience are probably the most important things that they are looking for in the solution. Whereas the same solution, if you take it to an enterprise, to a business, right, then they may be putting up this lighting solution in a large office space. So there could be thousands of lights, right? So nobody's going to come in and say good night. But what is important for you is cost minimization. So essentially, you need to provide a dashboard in your solution which says how many lights are currently on, what is the power consumption of individual lights, what brand of light went in which socket, and therefore can I create a map of which vendors' products are better than others, which vendors' products are lasting longer, right? So these are components that will that has to be encapsulated in your enterprise dashboard, right? Similarly, if you look at building the solution for the government, why will the government take it? Well, the government might say that they might want to put it up for street lighting solution, right? If it's street lighting, then the first priority of that solution is citizen safety. Is there enough light for the citizens to feel safe, right? Along with that, if they're not feeling safe, can the light start to integrate with other urban services to be able to provide them inputs, whether in terms of maintenance, whether in terms of smart lighting, providing a high coverage area. So typically, when you're looking at smart lighting solutions for street lights, you are essentially looking at redesigning the LEDs so that they are replaceable by modules. They have a large coverage. Their isoluminosity lines are wider, right? So it kind of covers a wider area. Right? So those are the things that you may want to focus on if you are making that same smart lighting solution for the government. So clearly, even though you are building a solution, a smart lighting solution, based on who your end user is, your solution might change, right? So, for example, you're building something for farmers, right? You might want to build something that is what is called grow lines, which will maximize yield, which will maximize the yield. For example, if there is a lot of, if you want to have, light of a particular frequency that are beneficial for a particular crop cycle, right? So then they can be scheduled accordingly. And that is a smart lighting solution targeted towards yield maximization. Right? So the same solution can have multiple manifestations based on who is the end consumer, right? also have to take into account how many of these end consumers are there. Right. So should you be building a product, for example, if you're building a smart lighting solution for an end consumer, in that case, there could be hundreds, there could be hundreds of thousands or millions of consumers who are connecting to your network. If you are building it for an enterprise, then you might be looking at a few hundred private deployments. Right. So the scale of your solution will also change accordingly. As I was mentioning, you have already gone through the design thinking process. I'm going to just quickly reiterate the steps that you would have gone through, where you learned that when you are creating your new product as part of your creative thinking or out of the box thinking process, must focus a little bit on creating empathy, on understanding what is your customer's real pain point. Right? So the first stage really involves understanding the needs, motivations, and challenges of the people for whom you are designing that solution. Right? So it will involve conducting research, observing the users, engaging in empathetic conversations to gain deep insights into their experiences, their emotions, and their aspirations. Right? The next thing, once you go past the empathy stage, is where you go into the definition phase, right? What should your product look like, right? So in this stage, your designers are analyzing the research findings and kind of synthesizing them to define the core problem or the opportunity statement, right? So it involves reframing the insights that are gathered during the empathy stage into clear and actionable problem statements that will guide your design process. So you will use this empathy map to kind of reflect back whenever you start to understand if your customer persona really wants this particular type of a solution, right? Then you ideate. You take a big jug of coffee if you're a coffee lover and you start to eat, right? So the ideation is a phase of generating a wide range of ideas without judgment again, right? Whatever comes in, just jot it down. You can always prioritize them later on, but with in the ideation phase, what you're doing is you are brainstorming and exploring various possibilities and potential solutions to address the different problems that you are facing. Right? So here again, techniques such as brainstorming or mind mapping and sketching are often employed to kind of create that or kind of foster that creativity and generate innovative ideas. Right? Then comes the stage that we are most interested in today, which is about prototyping. Right? So the prototyping stage essentially involves transforming the selected ideas into tangible representations. Right? So designers will create low fidelity prototypes such as sketches, wireframes, and will go into each and every one of them, or even physical mockups. Right? To bring that concept to life from an idea in somebody's mind, give it voice, to give it words, to give it a shape, to give it form. That is what your prototype is about, right? So the prototypes serve as a means to gather feedback, test assumptions, and to iterate on the design. And finally, you have the testing phase where essentially it involves obtaining feedback on the prototypes from the target users or stakeholders and iterating over it over and over again until you come out with a solution that that is acceptable by your focus group. Essentially, you'll not be able to go to everybody for feedback, but your focus group is the reference point against which you are building, right? So when you think about this innovation, right, when you are talking about what is the problem that you are solving, that innovation space it's not a very constrained space. Your innovation can really come about, and there are four major dimensions around from which this can come about, right? It is called essentially we call it the four P's of innovation. So what can your innovation do? If you are building a generic product, you don't really need a whole lot of innovation. You may still need to innovate a lot in terms of your branding and marketing strategy, but from a product perspective, you do not need significant innovation. But if you are introducing new features into the market, right, that is essentially what we call is a product innovation, right? So this refers to the tangible or intangible offerings that meets a customer's need or solves a problem, right? So, for example, when Tata came up with the Nano, right, it really aimed at people who are driving around in two wheelers. Mostly the most of the people driving around the two wheelers are Indian middle class family people. Typically, the family unit comprising of husband, wife, maybe two kids, right? So therefore, how to kind of accommodate four people, two adults and two children, in a low-priced vehicle that provides protection from the elements, as well as is budget friendly, is typically available at a little bit more than what a moped or a scooter would cost, right? And then what the Tatas did is they redesigned how they were going to get all the parts in, so that they can minimize the amount of interactions and transit costs, and further leverage the scale of the economies of scale to reduce the cost and make a cost-effective offering. The initial pricing target was, how do we build a safe car for less than a lakh, that can drive, that can accommodate about four people. Right? So those are called product innovations. Other thing that happens is sometimes you have positioning innovations as well. And positioning innovation really comes in when you are introducing new pricing models, right? For example, what you will know the positioning innovation very, very famously for is differential pricing in, not differential pricing, low-cost airlines, for example, right? So instead of charging for all the services that a consumer are expected to use in a flight, if I unbundle those services and charge them only for the specific services that they are consuming, can I create a service model which is lower priced and therefore positioned slightly lower in the market, right, to a more price sensitive market. So a low cost airline or a full featured airline will both get you from city A to city B. But a low-cost airline may actually provide you a lot of value-added services instead of bundling those prices into the same product itself, right? So your meal service could be optional, your baggage services could be optional, right? Your seating priority could be optional, right? So these are things that can be unbundled, and therefore the low-cost airlines are able to provide a cheaper fare, essentially. You can also bring about process innovation, right, where you are introducing new methods of doing the same thing. For example, a lot of e-commerce, when we think about e-commerce, right, it's introduced a new way of ordering in food, right? The earlier method was you go to a shop, you go to a restaurant, place an order, stand there while the order is being booked, you get a takeaway, and then you bring it home. But with the introduction of a lot of the, say, Swiggy or this kind of services, you can order a delivery online, right? With e-commerce, instead of going to a grocery shop, putting everything into a basket and then checking it out, you can select it using an app, and the product gets your basket gets delivered to you, right? So this is the process innovation. It changes the way we are used to doing something, right? You can see process innovation in terms of smart parking solutions, right? We were all using parking before, but now you can make pre-reservations or reservations. There's no pre-reservation, but you can make reservations about a parking spot, right? So this is all improvements in the existing way of doing things, and these are all essentially new innovations that are coming in, but it does not have a tangible product. The product is virtual, right? But you can still go ahead and build this. And then there are these paradigm innovations. Paradigm innovations are typically few and far in between. And one of the classic examples is banking services, right? Essentially, if you look at, say, small finance banks, right? Banking sectors typically were of the conviction that in order for somebody to open an account, they must have a credit history. Until Grameen Bank came around, and it fundamentally made a proposition saying that instead of taking on a very high loan exposure to a few key individuals or a few key industries, let us take a smaller exposure to many individuals at the bottom of the pyramid. It is very unlikely that a large percentage of small farmers, people who have taken small loan are going to default, rather than one large major industrialists, going bankrupt, right, and causing thousands of crores of non-performing assets for a bank, right? So it allowed us to create a fundamentally new banking product for people who were considered as non-bankable. In many cases, in the US, one of the key things that they were thinking, that a company called Walmart was thinking about was, they had information about people who were shopping there. They knew exactly what they shop. They knew every month that those people came back and what exactly they shop. Right. So even if these people did not really have bank accounts, Walmart had enough information about them to be kind of provide them a near banking financial experience, right? Because they had their history, they knew the trends of their shopping patterns, right? So when you think of innovation, it is not your innovation typically combines a lot of these aspects of product design, positioning design, process design, as well as paradigm design, right? So it may not, even when you think of it as a physical product or a intangible product, right? Even then, its innovation could come in across all these four, from any of these four pillars, or could be more concentrated towards one than the other. Typically, when we think of products, we generally think of something that is more tangible, right? So, how do you build a product, right? You have to understand that when you are building a product, you have to keep your target audience in mind. What is it that they are looking for? So what I did is I went on Amazon and looked at what are water bottles that are available. Right? So I found this stainless steel water bottle by Pigeon, which is a zero point 0.7 liter stainless steel water bottle for 179 rupees. Right? Then I looked a little bit, and on Amazon I found a category on the right which essentially said, do you want an acrylic water bottle, a ceramic water bottle, a copper water bottle, an earthenware water bottle, a glass water bottle? So there are about 15, 20 different bottle material categories. Right? And then there are bottle special features. Do you want it to be airtight? Do you want it to have an infuser? Do you want it to be a flip top? So what you can see is that your product has a large feature space. It could have one of all these features, right? It could be a diamond-shaped water bottle. It could be a rectangle-shaped water bottle, right? So there is a lot of differentiation in the feature space itself, right? Or there is also a lot of difference in the pricing space, from under 179 rupees to over 3,000 rupees. So there is a product that is developed for each pricing segment that is there, right? Because wherever people have found that, yes, there is a pricing gap, there aren't enough water bottles that are available, say, for example, between 500 and 800 rupees. So somebody would have introduced a price, found out that market opportunity and introduced a water bottle around that pricing model. So giving it some additional features over what was available at 500 rupees, right? So that's how you explore the competitive market, look for gaps that are there, and design products to fit in those gaps. Rather than building a product and saying that this is the best product in the market is going to go gaga about it. Please understand that the market does not care for your technology. The market cares if their problem is being solved. So rather than going gaga over technology, understand if you are able to solve the market's problem. And that is very, very key when it comes to solving for creating a practical product. You'll find in many cases the messaging has changed. Instead of saying that this is a water bottle, this is a container of water, it is saying that this is an instrument to keep you hydrated throughout the day, to motivate you to stay hydrated. The messaging changes, and therefore the design parts changes significantly. And you're able to sell, IoT-enabled water bottles which connect back to your mobile app and let you know how much water you've had throughout the day, right? So you can bring in those features as well, or you can completely change the paradigm and say, hey, this is not just a water bottle, this is an alkaline water bottle. You put in water, it converts that to alkaline water, which is much more beneficial for your health, right? So that's a paradigm changer. Things like live straw, which provide filtration of the water while it is being kept, while you are drinking that water itself, right? So even in the water bottle category itself, you will find that there are hundreds of players who have differentiated themselves in the feature space, in the pricing space, or in the process space, or in the paradigm space. When you are designing a product, you have to be very clear in terms of what is the feature set you are going after. Because once you have committed to delivering that, the once you have committed to engineering that product for mass manufacture, it is very hard to roll back at that point, right? Then you have to be committed to that. Because I want you to understand that when you are building a product, its cost, where does its cost really come from? If you look at it, probably a majority of the cost is going to about 50% of the cost is going to come from the materials that are used for making that product, right? So about anywhere between 40 to 60% will come from the cost of the goods sold, including its material cost, manufacturing cost, packaging costs, and all of that. And then we find that there's a pretty significant chunk, anywhere between 5 to 15%, that goes in research and development of that product itself, right? Which pieces to combine together, which suppliers' products are better than the others, right? So there's a cost that goes towards R&D as well. In many of your cases, when you're thinking about taking your idea to the next step, a lot of the time that you are spending time on is essentially the market, the research and development part of it. You have not yet attributed the cost of capital expenses that are needed to build the equipment that will manufacture your final products, right? Or the travels that you have to make to various suppliers to figure out what their product is. Like those are your essentially will come under your capex costs. Then there is a marketing and advertising cost, which takes up a significant chunk because you have to acquire the customer, whether it is an ad that you put out there, right? Whether it is a Facebook ad or a Google or an ad that you put out on Google, they all are going to cost you money. So there's going to be costs associated with running those ads, paying staff for for creating those marketing campaigns, right? And typically, marketing will end up costing you anywhere between 5 to 20% of your product cost. Right? Then there is distribution and logistics. The goods have to physically move from your production facility through warehouses, through retailers to the end consumer. And in many cases, you may also need a back check. You also need to account for goods that are being returned, right? So there you need a reverse channel as well. Typically, if you're making a non-intangible product, like for example, a mobile app, if that is your product, then your distribution and logistics cost may be a little lower, but still you may need to have revenue sharing agreements with, say, Apple, Apple Play or Google Play Store, something like that, right? So the Play Stores themselves might charge you for hosting hosting and distributing your app, essentially, right? Then there are overheads, right? You've got to, have your office space. You've got to have, taxation and compliance, right? So these are all part of your overhead and administrative costs, right? Your overheads, compliance, and your support and customer service can easily end up taking anywhere between 10 to 25% of your cost, right? So when you are building your product, you have to consider that these are going to be some of your costs. So in terms of building, you may decide that, look, I do not want to build all the pieces that are needed in order to create my product, right? So instead of me taking on the R&D costs and buying machine that would make my product, why don't I go to somebody who has already built this product for somebody else and see if they would be willing to white label their product to me, right? Which would significantly reduce my initial costs of going to market, but they may it may work out. It may allow me to go to market really quickly, but it may not work out if I have to sell this in high volumes, right? Or I could go for contract manufacturing, as in I do the R&D, but I don't create the manufacturing facility. I go to somebody who is manufacturing similar kind of product for indifferent customers, for indifferent companies, and because they have already invested in all the big high-end cutting machines and CAD CAM machines and all of that, it might be easier for them to amortize the cost of of the equipment, and it might be cheaper for me to go for contract manufacturing, right? Similarly, with marketing and advertising, right, some products tend to have much higher marketing costs than others. If you look at something like a Tesla, right, a Tesla is, if you bought a Tesla, you are going to be very, very proud that you bought a Tesla. You are going to go and tell all your neighbors and all your friends and all your family that you bought a Tesla, right? So in that case, Tesla doesn't need to really spend money in marketing because you are doing their advertising and marketing for them. So if your product is really in that category, what is called a purple cow marketing, right? If your product is really that good enough that your customer cannot stop talking about that product, right? Then you need to spend much lower in terms of your marketing costs. But if you are selling a product which is not very great, right? Which has a lot of discretionary spending, right? Then you may have to push that product a little bit more. You may have to go a little bit more aggressive in terms of its marketing, and you may end up spending a lot more money on marketing, right? So, so each company has its own marketing budget as well. Right? So that has to be taken into account. Why I brought up marketing budgets is because it has to be taken into account when you are building your prototype itself. Because in your brainstorming phase, you can brainstorm about a bunch of different ideas. But how do you prioritize them? You prioritize them based on what can you really deliver, what can you really make, right? That is very, very important. If you have a contract manufacturer who can make specific kinds of parts, you want to be able to reuse that design in your prototype itself, right? You start to design your prototype now, keeping in mind that a particular component will be sourced from a particular vendor. And if you know that, then what ends up happening is the dimensions of the other pieces that are going to, where you're going to put this part in, they kind of match, right? So, for example, if you're building a motherboard, for example, and you already know that you're going to use an Intel processor for that, which specific Intel processor you want, you can design your socket interfaces and everything, based on the fact that it is going to be designed for an Intel processor. Similarly, if you are designing, for example, a particular a mouse, right? And you know that your wheels are going to be of a standardized dimension. You are going to take that into account in your design, in your prototype design itself. And your prototype can have multiple, there are multiple ways of doing these prototypes. You can do sketches, you can do animations, cardboard mock-ups, wireframes, scale models, right? You can do interactive prototypes, material prototypes, 3D prints, service prototypes, and each of them kind of have their own pros and cons. A quick interjection there, Chetan or Rituparna, how much time do we have?
We have 10 more minutes, sir.
We have 10 more minutes, right? So I'm going to cover the remaining part a little quickly so that we get on to the questions about the session, right? So if you look at prototypes, what kinds of sketches are there? Right? So the sketches could be a product that is shaped out. Right? It could be a product that has, where you have, indicative numbers saying that this is where I want a particular groove, this is where I want the housing to look like, right? So it kind of roughly allows you to visualize and communicate these concepts, right? As I was talking about the mouse design, right? You can look at various ergonomics that are coming in. There's a little pebble over here. There's a little bit of an engraved design that is there. So you're able to visually think about what that design is going to be about. If you're building a software-based product, then your mockups are going to come in really, really handy, right? You're giving a sense of what kind of wireframes they are, and that sketch kind of becomes the starting point to essentially create a wireframe from which you create a higher fidelity mockup, from which you create a higher fidelity prototype, right? So in many cases, you can see a direct mapping between what you have designed and the high-level wireframes that have come out of it, right? So the design and animation, you could also use tools like Figma, where you can also use this interaction design, right, which kind of tells you what is the action that a user is supposed to perform and which screen does it take them to, right? So you can create this kind of interactive models as well, right? You can also do cardboard mockups, and I find them really, really fascinating, right? Which is a small scale using cardboard or some other very simple materials to build a low fidelity physical representation of the design concept, right? So you can do seating arrangements around that. This was, I don't know if you can see this, this was a Samsung printer essentially created using cardboard, right? About 3 years ago, I created a an air purifier, pre-COVID, of course. And this was my first cardboard box that came out. We put in an exhaust fan that was lying around. We put in a cloth, a wet cloth on top of it. And then we had essentially dust sensor that was connected to a mobile app, which we had developed for another project. We put that in, and lo and behold, we were able to put a cardboard around it. And this is, the day we created it. This entire exercise took me probably about 3 hours, right? But we had a working prototype. Right? A few years ago, we were building this smart ATM. Right? When I was in this company called Altx. So on my desktop, I had a little paper model that I printed using color printer, folded it up, and then we had a small scale model of what we wanted to do. And then we scaled it up, right? We actually then ordered this out of ply and put it in a room so that it kind of mocked and what an ATM would be like, and then put it up, set up the whole thing over there, right? So it would give you that experience of somebody walking into an ATM and what they could do. Right? That used to be my CEO's room. So we said, okay, get out of the room now. We will use the room to demonstrate our working prototype. And then we mounted all the other sensors around it, right? So that there's a smart camera over here. There is, this was done probably around 2000, I think 12, 13, somewhere around that time frame, right? Where you open the door, this light goes on, right? And you can see that from a desktop model, how it scales up into something that is demonstrable and gives you that kind of a user experience in that whole flow, right? Wireframes are already covered, so I'm not going to go too much into details around that. 3D prints, a whole bunch of 3D prints are now available. This is before you mass manufacture your product, right? It is always good to create a 3D print, right? So that you have a sense of what it will look like, what the various proportions are essentially looking like, right? You can even use metal printed parts these days. You pick up any kind of modeling software, right? 3D printing software, whether it is Blender, whether it is any other part, right? And you go ahead and 3D print that part before you go ahead, so that you have a sense of what the final product will look like, right? And there are a plethora of technologies that are available in the market today, right? That you can explore. Each one of them has their own pros and cons, right? There is FDM 3D printing, right? Fuse deposit modeling. Low fidelity gets the work done really quick. It will leave a lot of burrs, but that's okay if you are trying to get something done really quickly. Then there is stereolithography, right? Or SLA-based systems. There is something called SLS or selective laser sintering, right? Which kind of creates module within the sinter material itself. There is DLP based 3D printing, which is light activated, right? Then there is DMLS, right, which is direct metal laser sintering. So multiple technologies are available. I'm not going to be able to go into the details of each of them today, but know that each of these have different capabilities in terms of its precision and finish, right? How close to the finished product you want to get essentially. And there are also these material prototypes where even cars today are actually use clay to make them, right? Or you can use polyester, right, to kind of give a shape of what your product is designed like, right? If you are building a service, in many cases, we actually go in and create a mock-up of how that service is going to look like. Have mock-up so that, somebody coming in, what would they feel like? Where would be the next person they would go to, right? And these are called service prototype because it takes you through the customer journey, right, in the solution itself. And Lego is a great way of doing it, right? You can create this customer area, plant area, how would a visitor's view of coming to your plant look like? So these are all service prototypes, right? Also, a bunch of AR, VR prototypes available today, right, where you can project a particular thing, your product in a space and see what it looks like, right? Very, very quick to build them, rather. So that I think I'll close my discussion from a discussion perspective, right? But what I want you to take back is that once you are done with the PCB design or the product design, you have to think about the enclosure as well, right? What is going to be the housing looking like? And there again, you do see a lot of 3D modeling prototyping going on there. Once you have the 3D design, you can now take it for engineering processes. And engineering process is where you really make a mold. You cannot be 3D printing a million pieces, right? It's going to be very, very expensive. So what you do is you create a metal mold and that use that with either inkjet printing or not inkjet with plastic molding, injection molding or something like that in order to create high volume of mass manufactured products, right? Uh, Final thing was not only do you have to design the product itself, you have to also ensure that it is packaged properly so that your product gets the necessary protection, the necessary presentation, the user experience, right? The point of sale visibility, that somebody needs to buy that product, right? The legal requirements it has to follow in terms of labeling, right? The cost considerations of the packaging, the supply chain efficiency of your packaging, and finally the environmental impact. So you have to consider all of this when you are designing a package for your product, because good products they can bomb in the market if you're not thinking about the proper user experience. If the user experience is poor or your market research is not reflecting in the product itself, or there is inadequate functionality that is provided for your product, or it has poor aesthetics. So these are major reasons why, even though you may think that you have the greatest product that you have made, but when it comes out into the market, ultimately it's like a movie, right? The day it releases, only then will you know what the market really thinks about it, whether the movie is going to be a hit or a flop, right? So the customer is king. The customer knows what they want, right? You can only convince them. You can try to convince them by giving them a lot of value for their, right? So with that, I will close my session and probably take on a few questions. I know I've shot over the timeline a little bit, and I apologize profusely for that, but I'll be happy to take questions. If the coordinators I have been able to collect any questions from the audience, please have them on the chat, or you can talk about them. Are there any questions from the YouTube channel? So Rituparna has a question: which step is the most important step in design thinking, and how do we come up with the prototype? Personally, I feel that the brainstorming phases, right, that is what makes or breaks a product, because typically when we get into product design, we kind of come in with a lot of bias. right? Therefore, when we think about a mobile app for an elderly population, for example, we assume what the elderly population is capable of doing or not doing, right? And that is where our personal biases tend to affect the product design. It is always important to approach product design with a very, very open and empathetic mind. You have to trust the data that comes, even if that is non-intuitive. So opening the pathways, not shutting down any idea that is coming during the brainstorming phase, right? Techniques like what do I not want in my product, right? So taking the reverse approach is also a very, very good, right? Or building on top of what a group of designers have come up with, right? Let them just pass on and build on top of the idea, right? Role plays that helps quite a lot. And it's not just the physical product, it's the thought process of how the user is going to use that product. Like that is very, very important in the design aspect, right? Whether it is, you're designing a smartwatch, you're thinking about what material should the band be made out of, what are the different ways that I can leverage this, right? It is because of this design process that something like a Swiss knife exists today, right? And you have to understand that if you capture the needs of the design, of the needs of the target group really well, there are other AI-based tools that can help you probably look at a wide range of different product designs to achieve that same objective. So do not go in thinking that I am going to build this particular product. I'm going to, this is the way other people have done this particular product. My product also has to be on similar grounds. Think about all the way of solving the problem. Maybe you'll come up with an approach which involves not building that product as well. Right? Are there any other questions? You can put up your questions on the YouTube channel as well. If there are no further questions, then can we go ahead and close the session?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I hope the session was useful to everybody who tuned in. Right. I hope this helps you understand what product management and product design is really all about, and what are the different avenues that you can pursue around it. It's a fascinating journey, right? So any of you are aspiring product designers, welcome to the club. Thank you, everybody. Have a very, very
Sir,
good
can I get 2 minutes?
Yeah, sure, please.
Thank you so much, sir, for this informative webinar. It was indeed a productive session, and everyone gained a lot of information about designing a product. I would like to thank everyone for your cooperation and for this opportunity to host. It was very informative session, sir, about the product failure reasons and even the water bottle, the technique you told, and even the design thinking process. So thank you for everything. Thank you so much, sir.
You're all welcome. You're all most welcome.